Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Hour of Devastation spoilers. And we have a ton of cards to talk about today. So many cards have come out since yesterday, which means we gotta jump right into it. And I'm super excited because first off, we get to talk about not one, but two official previews we had today over at MTGGoldfish. So let's talk Solemnity and Crook of Condemnation. So the big thing here is hate cards are back in Standard. We've been asking for it for a long time. We need more answers, Wizards. Things are too focused on the threats, and we are getting them right now. It's starting in Hour of Devastation. So let's start by talking about Solemnity, which is probably the most exciting of the two. Basically, players can't get counters, which means energy counters. Of course, Aetherworks Marvel is gone, but still, there's a lot of things that this targets. So it means no energy counters, it means no infect counters, also keeps counters from being put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. So what does this card do in Standard? It's pretty much just a hate card. The good news is, it hates on a lot of Tier 1 stuff. Solemnity pretty much locks out the green-black decks. Almost every single card in those decks revolve around counters. Windy Constrictor, doubling them. Verdurous Gearhulk, pretty silly looking when it doesn't get to dump counters on things. Rishkar, super underpowered when you can't put counters on things. So making all of your opponent's stuff not be able to get counters, or everything not get counters, means that a lot of their cards are just going to be way worse. You take Verdurous Gearhulk from a 9 out of 10 to like a 3 out of 10. It's just a 4/4 for 5. And it goes even further because even though Marvel's gone, there's still a lot of powerful energy stuff. Lots of decks play Servant of the Conduit. Maybe the most popular deck in Standard right now is Teamer or 4-color Energy, which is kind of like Marvel without the Marvel, winning with Whirler Virtuosos and Bristling Hydras, and keeping your opponent from being able to make energy really hurts this deck as well. So I think that Solemnity is likely to be a super sideboard card in Standard, and that's not even including the fact that it also stops effects that put counters on things when they enter the battlefield. So I actually had to double check about this because I wasn't sure, but it does work. So if you cast a Walking Ballista for 2 mana or 10 mana, it doesn't matter, it's going to come in as a 0/0 because no counters can be put on it. And Walking Ballista is another one of the most popular cards in Standard, so it just hits on so many things. This also is relevant in older formats with stuff like Chalice of the Void, can't have counters on it so your opponent can't Chalice on 1/u. As far as older formats, in Modern, there's a few different things Solemnity does. First off, it stops Inkmoth Nexus, it stops Infect, it also stops the new Devoted Druid combo. You can't tap and up and tap your Devoted Druid. It also allows for some sweet offensive potential. So we've seen infinite life gain Kitchen Finks combos using Malira, using Anafenza. Solemnity does the same thing. I don't know if you'd use Solemnity in place of those other options because you can tutor them up with Chord of Calling and whatnot. What Solemnity does do, though, that I don't think existed before, is lets us do those same combos with Geralt's Messenger. So the way Kitchen Finks works with Malira and with those things is it gets an extra counter on it, thanks to Anafenza, thanks to Malira, but that doesn't work with Undying, because Undying is like the inverted version of Persist, but with Solemnity, the -1/-1 counter can't go on Persist creatures, but the +1/+1 counter can't go on Undying creatures, which means Solemnity, Geralt's Messenger, Sacrifice Outlet is an infinite drain combo, and there's tons of sweet Undying creatures around, so there's new potential for new combos with Solemnity as well. And as far as Legacy, not a whole lot of targets. It probably won't see play, but it's worth mentioning. It's yet another way to make a Merit Lage with Dark Depths right away. Since the counters can't be put on lands, if you have a Solemnity out, you just play your Dark Depths, it immediately sacrifices itself, you get the 20/20 flying indestructible. As far as Crook of Condemnation, it's kind of the standard version of Relic of Progenitus. It's way worse than Relic in almost every way, mostly because it doesn't draw a card, but it also costs more mana. The only thing worth noting is you do get to pick what card you exile with the top ability, so it is a little bit better in that one regard, because you can pick out the most important card and not just get a random card of your opponent's choosing. As far as Standard goes, there are quite a few targets for it. We'll see just how good the decks are. It depends on the meta. It's a card that we want in Standard because it means if we have an Emrakul the Promised End dominating the format, we actually have a way we can do something about it. If we have Rally the Ancestors making Standard miserable, Crook of Condemnation is a way we can put an end to those shenanigans. But right now, it's kind of delirium effects, Aftermath effects, Eternalize. Those are the big graveyard mechanics. We'll see if any of them develop into real tier 1 decks. The closest one right now is Delirium, but we'll see what the new format looks like. Whether Crook of Condemnation sees play or not, though, it's a card that we want to exist in Standard because it does that safety valve role very well and just make sure nothing gets too out of line in the format. Next up, we have God number 2, the Locust God. So this is the blue-red, or is it color God? And this one is super powerful. We saw the Scorpion God. It's pretty sweet, but I think the Locust God has way more potential. 6 mana, you get a 4/4 flyer, which isn't above the curve. It's a little more than you want to pay for a 4/4 flyer, but it keeps coming back to your hand when it dies, so it's very hard to kill, and it has a pretty crazy ability that whenever you draw a card, you get a 1/1 blue and red insect creature with flying and haste, so it can potentially make a whole army all by itself. Which means in Standard, you cast a Pull from Tomorrow, you're going to end up getting 6, 8 power potentially in the late game, thanks to the Locust God. Even Glimmer comes with a kicker of 2 1/1 hasty flyers. You can chump to stay alive, you can go on the offense with them. It's also an interesting payoff for cycling, because cycling, you are drawing a card, so if you have a Locust God sitting out, every time you cycle, it's kind of like a Drakehaven that doesn't cost you mana. You cycle it, you get a 1/1 flyer. You cycle it, you get a 1/1 flyer. So it could see some play there as well. So I'm super excited for the potential of this as like a control finisher. We'll see. You're fighting Torrential Gearhulk. Maybe it won't be good enough right away, but there's a lot of potential there. Maybe the most exciting thing about the Locust God, though, is this is an awesome commander. It's going to be so sweet. If you like Spellslinger type decks, there's just so many support cards. For 3 mana, you can cast Windfall or Wheel of Fortune, and you're drawing 6, 7 cards, which is already a really powerful thing to do, but you're able to make a whole bunch of flyers with it. Even Brainstorm, 1 mana, you're getting 3 1/1 flyers. It's like a 1 mana Lingering Souls, a 1 mana Spectral Procession in blue. It's just so insane as a commander. Plus, thanks to the ability to keep bouncing it back to your hand, you avoid paying the commander tax of casting it for more mana from your command zone every time. So while in Standard, it's fighting with some other really powerful top-end effects and control decks, in Commander, the Locust God seems like an all-star, and I imagine it's going to be super popular in Commander. Our next mythic is Neheb the Eternal. So this is the next version of Neheb. This one is a afflict mechanic, so it has like pseudo unblockability. The big thing here, though, is whenever you go to your second main phase, your post-combat main phase, you get red mana equal to each damage that was dealt to your opponent, each life that was lost. This is a really interesting thing. So you can cast a Lightning Bolt, and not only are you getting 3 damage, you're also getting a Dark Ritual on your second main phase as long as Neheb is sitting out. Of course, it is pretty expensive. It's 5 mana. The thing, though, is if you have 5 lands, have 5 mana to invest in it, there's a decent chance, let's say in Standard, you play your Neheb, you attack with Blood Rage Brawlers and Soulscar Mages, maybe shock your opponent's face, and you're going to get back all the mana you spent right away. So while you do need the lands to initially cast it, it kinda is free, sort of like a Rewind, the blue counter spell where you get to untap 4 lands. You do have to have the initial 5 mana, but a lot of times it's gonna play like it's free, and it's pretty reasonable for its cost. Here again, I'm not really sure where it fits. It might be more of a commander card, a little expensive for something like 2-tick red that's very aggressive and low to the ground. You just can't play a 5 mana effect, and it's fighting with a lot of big things. Gods, Gearhulks, there's a lot of expensive things. I think Neheb's going to need a very specific deck to beat out those other things in Standard, but the ability is super unique. Plus, Zombie Minotaur Warrior, really cool creature types, but the super unique ability might give it a shot in a very specific deck. So that's Neheb the Eternal. Moving on, we have Mirage Mirror, and I don't know what to say about this card. It's like a really unique clone. I scratched my head. I spent a long time digging for potential combos with it. The easiest one is Dark Depths. Everything combos with Dark Depths in Hour of Devastation, apparently. You can copy your Dark Depths with Mirage Mirror. It's a copy with no counters. It dies. You get a Mirror Age token, which is super big and huge. Is this better than Thespian Stage and the other ways of doing it? Probably not, but it is a thing you can do. Otherwise, I don't even know. If you have some ideas for combos with Mirage Mirror, let me know. I mean, you can make a Panharmonicon to get even more triggers, maybe Biovisionary, super janky, but it could work. It's also a way you can avoid negative enter the battlefield triggers, so you can play a Phyrexian Dreadnought, copy it with Mirage Mirror. You get to keep the one that you copied with Mirage Mirror because you don't have the enter the battlefield effect. It's basically a clone that avoids enter the battlefield effects. So I don't know, maybe there's some combo out there that I haven't seen yet, but it's definitely an interesting card, and it seems like a super fun card. I want to play this in commander decks and just copy random things for value, but as far as breaking it, I haven't really figured it out yet, but maybe you all can come up with some ideas. Next we have Pride Sovereign, which is a 2/2 for 3, but the big deal here is it's this crazy cat payoff. It gets +1/+1 for each other cat we control, and we can exert it by paying a white mana and get 2 cats. So if we can exert it one time, it's going to be a 4/4, and I think it's standard. I mean, this is going to be a key piece of Cat Tribal. Will Cat Tribal be good enough to be a tier deck? Probably not, but we got a sweet Lorg and Real Caracal, which works super well with Pride of Sovereign. Just Caracal by itself is giving it +3 power and toughness, so it's a 5/5. And we have like a Doran Pouncer, which has some potential, Sacred Cat, some recursive threats, so maybe we'll see enough cats to have an actual cat deck in Standard. The other thing people are excited about is the ability to go infinite with Intruder Alarm and Birds of Paradise. So Intruder Alarm untaps all creatures whenever a creature enters the battlefield, so you tap your Pride Sovereign, and then you untap all your creatures when the tokens enter, so you tap your Birds of Paradise again, use it to exert Pride Sovereign again, keep going through that loop over and over. The problem here is, we already have this combo, Thraben Doomsayer. I've tried to make this work on Budget Magic a bunch of times. You've never seen videos of it because I've never been able to make it work. So I think while Pride Sovereign, super sweet for Standard, way more powerful than Thraben Doomsayer in general, it's not as good as Thraben Doomsayer when it comes to comboing off and going infinite with Intruder Alarm in specific. There's just no way you choose to play a 3-card combo over a 2-card combo, everything else equal. It's just inherently less consistent because you have an extra card that you have to draw to combo off. So that's Pride Sovereign, super sweet, super excited. Cats are really spicy, and I'm glad that they're getting more support. We'll have to see if they get enough support for Standard. I don't think you play this as a standalone threat, especially in a world where we have tireless trackers and so forth, so maybe after rotation. I can't imagine it beats that stuff out now, but if we have Cat Tribal, or after rotation, keep an eye out for Pride Sovereign, because it could be pretty sweet. Next, we have a couple more rares, Scavenger Ground and Ruminant Hydra, and these ones, not going to go super deep, this is already a super long video, but Scavenger Ground's more graveyard hate, another safety valve card for Standard, but I think the big deal here is it's a colorless Bajuka Bog, essentially, for Commander, so it's just such an easy thing to slot into any Commander deck, because every Commander deck, if you ever watch Commander Clash, you know it's a lesson that we learn every week, should have graveyard hate, because every game of Commander, someone is doing something with the graveyard. It's very rare that it's not. So just slot this into all your Commander decks. I think it's a Commander staple, really. It's going to be so good there. And in Standard, it's a safety valve. If we have a crazy deck that's built around Delirium or reanimating stuff, it's going to be a great thing to have in the format. As far as Ruminant Hydra, it's basically a Woodland Wanderer, I think, is the easiest comparison. It's a 4-mana thing that can get pretty big, has a lot of abilities. I don't think that it's going to see any constructed play, but it seems pretty powerful in a desert-focused deck in Limited. And maybe, I mean, even if you have Desert in your graveyard and on the battlefield, getting a 5/5 Vigilance Trample Reach for 4 mana isn't so insane that you just got to build a deck around it. I mean, it's maybe slightly above the curve, but you're already getting to Verdurous, Gearhulks, and Gideons and all this stuff in the 4 and 5 mana slot, and I can't imagine that the Hydra is going to beat them out. Finally, a couple more late spoilers on the way out the door. Fraying Sanity seems like it's going to be a casual all-star. 3-mana curse, and it basically doubles up your mill. So the big thing here is Traumatize. Traumatize mills half your library. If you mill half your opponent's library, and then you have a Fraying Sanity out, which mills cards equal to the cards that were already milled, it's going to mill out your opponent's entire deck. So this seems like an instant win combo for mill if you can traumatize with a Fraying Sanity on the battlefield. Just your whole library's gone. Hopefully you don't have an Emrakul or something that shuffles back in. But even beyond a combo kill, you can always just glimpse the unthinkable. Mill 20 instead of 10, Tome Scour, mill 10 instead of 5, Breaking and Entering, mill 16 instead of 8. So there's a lot of things you can do with this card. Will this make mill a tier deck in Modern? I don't know, but it's very push and very powerful, and the amount of cards that this can mill in conjunction with other cards makes your mill cards from bad burn spells into good burn spells. And finally, Swarm Intelligence copies all your instant and sorcery spells. Downside is it costs 1,000,000 mana. It's kind of along the same lines of Cloven Casting or Hive Mind. This is another one I expect that you'll play in Commander when you can ramp into it, and then whenever you cast a card draw spell, you get it twice, a removal spell, you get it twice. Pretty sweet. Other than that, I can't imagine that it sees constructed play anywhere. So that's been our daily Hour of Devastation spoilers for today. So what do you think? What do you think of the new gods? How excited are you to have hate cards back in Standard with Solemnity and Crook of Condemnation? What's your favorite card from today? What combos can you think of for the mirror? Is Swarm Intelligence better than I think? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.